Hi revolutionaries. So I hope you can hear me. Right now I am in Vienna in Austria. I'm at a conference of 700 people, a gathering. There's 700 of us and we represent about 40 countries around the world. And I have never been in a room full of such amazing and fabulous people. Aside from TED conferences, I can't think of any other environment where there is just surrounded by so many amazing people. So I'm doing two seminars whilst I'm here, but I've just got a little bit of a coffee break. So I thought that whilst I'm here all week, I didn't want to miss doing a blog this week. So I wanted to have a quick chat with you. The only place I could do it is out here on the side of the road. So I don't know what you can see about my background, but there's some beautiful buildings here with really lovely surroundings. But we also do have a bit of traffic as well. So I'm hoping that you can hear and see me all okay. So today I wanted to talk about this topic of entrepreneurial creative anxiety. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Because whether we're creating a business or whether you're creating a product or whether you're creating a masterpiece, some kind of artistic masterpiece, all of that creation starts with a question. It may be, if you're starting a business, it may be that question is, how do I solve this problem for this sector, this business community? How do I make this system flow easier? How do I make my products serve them better, for example? If you're a screenwriter, it might be, how do I get the audience to connect with this actor's or this character's emotions that they're feeling at that time without necessarily using words to convey it. If you are developing a product, it may be, how can I make my product serve my community better? How can I make it taste better? How can I make it be healthier? How can I make it so that there's less slavery or no slavery in its production line? How can I make it biodegradable? So all of creation starts with a question. And if we're starting with a question, all of questions lead us into a slightly unknown zone. You don't know the answer to it. You don't know how it's going to end. And of course, that pulls us into the stretch zone and we end up feeling really anxious and the anxiety rises because we're being drawn into that stretch zone. And on last week's blog, you will notice that we were talking about that whenever we're being drawn into the stretch zone, we tend to feel anxiety and fear and all those awful things. And what happens is that people then feel this anxiety, feel this fear, and their response is to pull away from the creative process entirely. And then they feel this sudden relief, they feel the fear and the anxiety leave them, and they misinterpret this anxiety leaving them as, they misinterpret it as oh, well, I shouldn't have gone down that route anyway, that this is confirmation that I'm where I'm meant to be. And actually, all they're experiencing, all they're witnessing is the emotion of their dreams going off to the abattoir. If we are going to create something, if we are going to generate something really powerful for the world and something that's really offering a lot of value to the world, anxiety, fear, and emotional stress are going to be part of that. And I want to encourage you today that instead of trying to kill that off, which often results in killing the dreams too, we actually need to work through it. And kind of learn how to push through it and not do it in absence of those anxieties, but do it alongside those anxieties and invite those anxieties into the process, and most importantly, make room for them. So I know that when I am creating something big, when I'm creating something from scratch, if I go into my project manager's mind, I will say, right, I will have this created from start to finish within a week. I know that in reality, it's going to take a lot longer than that because I need to factor in my anxieties. I need to factor in my fears. I need to factor in the mornings where I've scheduled in my diary to work on the project, but actually I wake up and think, oh, Hayley, are you really up to the mark here? Can you really deliver this? Is it really worthwhile? Isn't everyone going to look at you and think, who the heck does she think she is? And that actually stops me from working that day. I know that that's coming. I need to factor that in. And there's I hope the background's not distracting you so much. There's like a woman dropping her kids off here. And I think we've now got a horse coming down the road too. But hey, you just got to deal with it, unfortunately. I travel quite a lot, so there'll be quite a few of these coming up. So You are going to have to get used to the environments, I'm afraid. But if you read Elizabeth Gilbert's new book, say hi to the horses. If you read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, she's got a really fantastic ritual where she actually welcomes fear and welcomes anxiety into her creative process. And she says to them, she says, hey, me and inspiration are going to go on a journey. And fear, you are more than welcome to come along. You are more than welcome to come along on this journey with us. However, you will not be driving. You will not be making decisions. That is for me an inspiration to make. And I love that, because you have to make room for fear. You have to give merit to fear and anxiety. But don't let it take over the driving seat. Don't let it be the decision maker. And almost starting the process off in that way reinstates your power, reinstates your roles. So I've got a couple of tips, I'm just going to drag them up, of some of the things that I found really, really helpful in terms of dealing with my entrepreneurial and creative anxiety. And one of the main ways that I've done that has been through understanding the creative process. And if you chat to any creative, they will tell you that they've got this weird and wonderful creative process, and sometimes it will have many different layers. But one of the simplest ways, just for time, and on my coaching packages, I go through this a lot more with people. I get them to understand their own creative process, get them to understand what they need to be focusing on in each stage of that, and then get them to recognize what fears and anxieties pop up at all the different stages. And but right now, I'm just going to go through some 3 top tips. And it's based on Walt Disney, one of the best creators that we all know. He had 3 stages to his creative process. Sorry, 3, not 4. 3 stages. He had the dreamer phase, the realist phase, and the critic phase. And each one of them had a slightly different element to it. And you will notice that you might, as I'm talking through them now, you may notice that some of the stages you have a real strength in, and there's no anxiety when that happens, where other stages there might be a lot of anxiety in, and you might actually need to build some psychological scaffolding around those stages in order to help you through them. So the first stage, the dreamer phase, is the phase where anything is possible, no criticism pops in, it's just about generating ideas. So he will get a load of people in a room and just throw ideas out there. There is no boundaries to what can be created here. So it's not about thinking how, it's about thinking what if we could create this new world. And I've got to admit that this phase comes super easy for me. I can do this phase whether I'm sat on a bus or I've got emails coming through. Let me turn that sound off. I can do that whether I'm sat on a bus or in the bath, in the back of a meeting where I'm thinking about something other than what the meeting is talking about. For some creatives, that phase comes so easy. We can see this future, we can see it and live in it quite vividly. But for other people who are maybe more project managers, where process comes quite easily, this phase can be really difficult. And this phase is super important, because what this phase does is it really hones down your why for doing it. Why are you doing this? Why is it important? So one of my reasons for wanting to empower female entrepreneurs is because I think it's one of the best ways to, business is one of the best ways to empower women in a society. And I've worked around the world with really vulnerable women, looking at gender-based violence, and I've seen that one of the quickest ways to stop gender-based violence in a community, I hope that police car's not going to drive past. It'll go soon. One of the quickest ways to abolish gender-based violence in communities is often by doing social entrepreneurship schemes with the women, because as soon as women get to see bring a value into the community, it does absolutely masses to their personal confidence, but also it starts to transform the whole society, the whole community. And I've got some great case studies on that, where that's happened in certain parts of Africa. But I also noticed that in the UK and in the developed world, so many women have these great ideas within them, but they just can't get them out. They just can't bring them forth. They're gagging to bring them forth, but they don't quite know how. And that's why I'm really passionate. I'm really passionate about flooding the world with feminine value, and that's what led me to start Hello Revolutionary. And it was that kind of why. It's that why am I doing this that really got me through all my own fears and anxieties. That, oh, what will people think? Well, some people will think it's great, others really won't. And actually, is my message, is my why worth going through it? Is it worth the judgment? Is it worth people misunderstanding? Is it worth the personal sacrifices that I may have to go through? Is it worth me going through the fear? And I thought, yeah, my message is worth that. It really is. So the dreamer phase isn't about thinking about how yet, it's about focusing on the why, because you're going to need the why for when you get to the tough bits, when you get to the hard bits, because it's the why that drags you through. It's coming back to your why am I doing this, that's really going to kind of mobilize you to push through the difficult bits and remind you why you're doing it when things get really tough, when you just want to give everything up. So the dreamer phase really builds your passion for what you're doing, and I really recommend investing in this stage if it doesn't come natural to you. Help bring people into this space where they can bounce around ideas. And like I say, do not get into the how here. Really restrict any hows. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. And the best spaces to do this in is outdoors or big kind of rooms with high ceilings where there is no lid, no kind of cramped space, nothing that kind of puts you into the thinking of logistics yet. So that's the dreamer phase. The second phase is the realist phase, which the project managers will love. And this is the phase where you will start to build a roadmap for actually what you want to do and how you're going to do it. So here you will start thinking about who's the team members that you need, what's the resources that I need to get this project off the ground, what's the timescales that we're going to work on here, and you plot out the resources that you need for this dream to happen. And this is the phase for me where the anxiety comes in, because this is where I start to talk myself out of the vision. I find it slightly difficult to do this. And I need often some help to bring people in to come and help me do this on my own projects. Now, I can do this fantastically with other people. I can plot out, come up with strategy, but here's where my fears and where my anxieties come in. Hayley, you're not up to it. This is where all the negative voices come in for me. You may have it in different phases. So you might want to start bringing in some other people around you who can look at your project objectively and start helping you to plan and structure. The best place to do this in is in slightly smaller areas, so slightly more workshop zones around a big table, where you can look at the project and start thinking about roadmaps to how you're going to achieve it. And in this phase, it's really important that you build in replenishment and nourishment, because actually most people are going to be stuck in this phase for quite a large chunk of time. Your project planning, that's quite a lot of, in the early days, quite a lot of your time is going to be spent in this area. And if it doesn't come natural to you, if the visionary, so for example, the visionary zone is the zone that really fuels me and really ignites me and really gives me all my energy to do everything. This is the phase that kind of sucks me dry a bit. So you really need to make sure that when you're planning this zone, you need to build in times that are going to really strategically nourish you and fill you back up to life again. So keep drawing the plan always back to the vision. So have the vision around the room, written on big statements. Be bringing all of the project planning stages back to the vision so that you're refueling yourself. You're constantly reminding yourself of the vision every time you're making a project plan to go forward. And the third phase is the critic phase. I hope you can hear me, lots of people walking past. The critic phase. And some people call this the spoiler phase, because people don't like criticism, particularly not of projects that have been our own vision, because we feel that criticism is kind of, we have this expression in the UK, don't piss on my bonfire. It's like, don't put my fire out, excuse my language. but you know, so don't people kind of see this critic phase as people kind of coming along and raining on their parade, and it's really not like that, because the critic phase is essential for creating an awesome product. So the vision stage is all about creating a product that's bigger than what's already out there, that's more amazing than what's already out there, that's more fabulous than what's already out there. You're taking this dreamer phase to a whole new level. The reality phase is great. How are we going to do this? What's the road of least resistance? How are we going to create, we've got loads of tourists walking past, sorry. How are we going to create this super awesome project with the least steps to get there? What are the steps that we need to get there? How are we going to make that easy for ourselves? The last phase, the critic phase, is what refines your product. It's what debugs it. It's what tests it, and what makes sure that when you take your product to market, it's not going to have a load of flops and a load of technological faults and a load of things that just don't work in reality, because you can create these really awesome plans that fall apart on their first contact with reality. And the critic phase makes sure that this doesn't happen. It tests your products, it evaluates it, it makes sure it figures out what's missing and what's the best possible version of your product. And Walt Disney actually used to do this in a cupboard under the stairs at the Walt Disney offices, and he used to line people up in a single line with the project plan that was developed in the realist stage on the wall, and he used to get people to line up in a straight line and objectively look at it and critique it. And what was important about the straight line, the kind of single file, is that it meant that people weren't going after each other. People weren't talking across the table at the project plan. And what that did is it meant that nobody felt that they were getting offended, or nobody's work was getting critiqued that they personally invested in. It meant that they were looking at the project in a really objective way, and when they were critiquing it, they were critiquing the project, not each other. And that's really important, because if you are going to do this around a table, you need to approach that with real humility. Because otherwise people are going to get offended. And sometimes I would say that if you're doing this in a team context, pin it up on a wall and sit single file looking at it and critique it that way. And what's really important is that if you have if you have one of these phases missing, something's not going to quite work out. So if you've got the dreamer and the critic, which is the two that I've got high confidence in my ability, but also high criticism in my ability too. And I'm a real good visionary, but I'm also really good at criticizing my visions as well. What that means is nothing's going to get off the ground. So imagine this. Imagine I said to you, I am going to run from London to Edinburgh, and I'm going to do it in the fastest time ever. Well, anyone who knows me would say, Hayley, are you on crack? Seriously, when was the last time you went for a run? That would stop me. The criticism comes in and it would stop me before I even got going. However, if I said to you, I'm going to run from London to Edinburgh, this is the route I'm going to take, this is the amount of months I've got to train for it, this is my trainer I've got to help me, and this is my program that I've got to train, that he's training me on to get my fitness levels up. When the criticism comes in, it might be perfecting my plan rather than crushing it. So if you've got the dreamer and the critic, but without the realist phase, the chances are that your vision's never really going to get off the ground. If you've got the dreamer and the realist phase, the chances are that you're going to have a plan and you're going to be able to put it into practice, but it's never quite going to be perfect. It's never quite going to be as good as it could be if the critic was in place. Or it might mean that you come up with this great fabulous product and this great plan and you take it to market and the market doesn't even want it. You need the critic there to be asking you objective questions that are going to refine and perfect your product. And that is really crucially essential, that if you don't have the dreamer phase there, if you don't have the critic phase there, the realist and the critic is the third phase. And if you don't have, so this phase, you've got a product and you've got, these products tend to make money. These products do tend to make money. So if you've got the realist and the critic in flow, you'll make a product, it will go to market, it will be good. but you're never creating, because you haven't got the dreamer phase, you're never creating something truly exceptional because you haven't allowed the project to really flourish under the visionary stage. And most importantly, these kind of projects for the project lead will feel like a long, hard slog because you haven't allowed enough time in the visionary stage, in the dreamer stage, for your own vision, for your own passion to develop. And these are the people who will, make a lot of money, develop great products, but they'll have a flipping miserable time doing it because they just haven't allowed themselves enough time to get passionate about the product, to be able to build their why behind why they're doing it. So that's a kind of couple of examples of why, if you don't have one of these, if one of the stages is missing, how the project won't be everything that it could be. So I really encourage you just to look at those 3 phases, really dig into them. I'm going to develop a little worksheet that goes into these a little bit more, which you can access on the resources page. So do sign up and get that. It'll go into a lot more detail and talk you through how you can build some psychological scaffolding around each one of the stages to really help activate you through those stages. So that's just a few kind of top tips on the little bit creative process and understanding the creative process and how to work with that fear and anxiety through creativity rather than trying to shut it down, which actually shuts down your creativity as well. So engage with the fear, get to know your creative process yourself, and experiment with these phases and applying them to your project zones. So that's all I've got for you today. I need to shoot off now and go and give a seminar, and I'll be back in London next week, and I'm going to do another blog then. So hopefully see you then. Okay, bye bye for now.